listening to the Marketing Personalities Podcast, a podcast for growth-minded entrepreneurs that serves up valuable insight and interviews about aligning your marketing strategy with your personality type. Because here's the deal. You shouldn't have to feel fake and salesy in order to grow your business. And you no longer have to. Your marketing strategy can feel good to implement and it can work. You can attract the right clients and customers to your business and grow your profits, all while staying true to who you naturally are. So in the name of honest business growth, bring your unique talents, perspectives, and personality to the table. And join us on this week's podcast episode to discover marketing that feels good for you. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with Rachel East, co-founder of Clarity on Fire. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm thrilled. I've been wanting to talk about this with you for so long because I was there when you first had this idea. Maybe not physically in the room, but you shared this idea with me like when it was percolating. And I've been a complete early adopter on board since day one, because I think that this is something we need to be talking about and very few people are talking about. So good. Let's talk about it.
Yes. This is why I love Rachel. Yeah. So Rachel and I are here today to discuss a specific tribe of personalities, the Diplomat tribe, which is you, if you are either an INFJ, INFP, ENFJ, or an ENFP. Now, we've got to be super upfront about this because this is unlike the other episodes that we're going to have in this series about the tribes, because Rachel and I are both in this tribe. I mean, it had to happen with one of the tribes, right? Like I have my personality type and it happens to be in the Diplomat tribe. So you're going to get to hear about the Diplomat tribe from two different diplomats with two separate personality types. And I'm equally as excited about this conversation because if I know anyone in this world willing to go there and willing to go deep on something, it is this girl right here, Rachel East, everybody.
Oh my God. I'm so flattered. I feel like I've reached a pinnacle to be described thusly by someone. And it's true. It's what I want people to know me as. It's like just the person who tells the truth.
The truth. And the deep truth.
Yeah, the deep, honest, real, raw, sometimes uncomfortable truth.
There it is. Yep. That's Rachel East, everybody. And we're going to see how that fits into that personality type of hers too. But before we dig into that, I want you to get to know Rachel a bit better, right? I know her really well. And as she kind of hinted at, she was one of my coaching clients while Marketing Personalities was starting to take form, as it started to come out of my head and into a spreadsheet. And then it started to become this bigger idea with more details, and then a website, and then a thing. And she's been along for the ride and she has seen it. And she was one of my clients where I was able to know her personality type from the beginning, start to see how that affected her strategy. And she was one of my data points, essentially. Like, okay, I know that this feels right for Rachel as an INFJ. That's different from how it feels to this other person and this other person. So yeah, Rachel's been around for a while. And I think we can easily say that you are fascinated with the self-awareness things as well, and as it relates to us. So all that to say, Rach, tell us about yourself. Who are you in this world? What are you up to?
Lord.
What's going on?
Okay, that's a big question.
I know. That's why
I'm talking in person. So, all right, I am one half of Clarity on Fire, which is a life and career coaching website, podcast, coaching business with my BFF for the past, going on 12 years now, Kristen Walker. We met in college and we've been best friends ever since. And we decided to start a business like almost 7 years ago. And so I could get into the whole story and you can tell me if you actually want that or not. But basically, to give you like the short-ish winded version of it, I very quickly, the first job I had out of college at 22, I was very disenchanted within like the first month. It's like, what the heck is this? I don't feel free. I don't feel autonomous. I feel like what I'm doing is completely meaningless and it has no purpose. It's devoid of any sort of fulfillment. I feel trapped by the having to be here from 9 to 5 when there's no point. And so I very, very, very quickly knew what I didn't want, but I had no idea how to translate that into knowing what I do want. And getting clear on that is sort of became my mission. And it's kind of been what I've then doled out to other people over the years as well. But I bounced around from like a series of unfulfilling jobs to the point where we got trained as coaches 7 years ago almost and started our business, have been helping people kind of bridge that gap between not knowing what they want and having no idea how to get there and how to find direction, but having a ton of information about all the things that they haven't enjoyed and all of the things that have disenchanted them over the years. And so we've kind of built a whole system around helping people find their passion and find their career and or life path, not always the same thing, in a way that actually aligns with who they really are on a deep level, not on a surface level. And we can talk more about how we actually do that and the whole passion profile system, which is actually has a lot in common with the whole marketing personality system. Because the whole point of both of those things is to help you do something really important, like work or start a business, in a way that actually aligns with who you are and how you're wired. So that's probably why we get along so well.
Exactly. Yeah. We are on a mission to do similar things in kind of different ways. With different people. But yeah, we're both on that trajectory to helping people.
Giving people permission, don't you think?
Yes. It took the words right out of my mouth. I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Giving people permission to work in a way that works for them, or run a business in a way that actually works for them, or market their business in a way that works for them, as opposed to just following the external advice of what is the quote unquote supposed to work.
Right.
Which doesn't. There is no one size fits all solution to anything. Find your passion or marketing your business or whatever.
Right. Exactly. Which everything that I think will probably be brought up in this entire conversation, I'm going to be able to relate it back to your personality type, because when we get in conversation, I feel we're so us. So everything you say, I'm like, yep, totally, totally you, totally this type of type. But still, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
It's kind of sad.
No, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
It's almost like, oh man, you're so predictable.
But so authentic, right? It's kind of like your perspective too.
And it's kind of nice to know that there's a reason and like a rationale behind it, and that it's not just random crazy musings. And I actually think that's what's so great about knowing your personality type. I mean, particularly the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities type of, but I mean this in so many different ways. I have a quiz that's a totally different assessment. But when you understand your type, you understand, oh, I'm not crazy. And the way I'm attracted to doing things is normal for me. And I've often labeled myself as wrong or other or less than, because I'm looking outside of myself and I'm seeing people doing things in a different way. And I'm thinking, if I don't do it that way, then there must be something wrong with me. And I really get riled by that. And I've made it kind of my mission to correct people and to hopefully get them to the point where their default reaction is not to assume that I must be broken if the way I want to do something is not the way that other people are doing it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I'm interested, we're just going to go here. I'm interested to hear your take on this, because I've been thinking about this as who I am. I like to give people permission to be who they are. And a really easy, a simple way to do that is to either create a label or a definition point, or use one that's already there. So someone can wrap their mind, like you said, wrap your mind around what's going on in this person of mine. And at the same time, I recognize that labels and those definitions are simply the things that our minds want to attach to. So it has some kind of anchor point Meanwhile, there's still so many deeper layers to all of us. So a definition or a label will never fully suffice. And I've sensed that perspective, while it might not be something everyone's going to want to be into, like thinking about and feeling into, I think you and I, as intuitive feelers and deep thinkers, deep feelers, can recognize that wholeness and that our type is our type and not our entirety.
Yeah, like 1,000%. I get frustrated when people try to use their personality type, or when they take my and Kristen's assessment, the passion profile quiz, and they get their result. And then they're like, well, because I'm a tribe member, for example, that means I can't do X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
And I'm like, no. Don't use my assessment to put yourself in a box.
Right.
No. That's not why I created this. I created this to give you permission to do life and to work in a way that aligns with your type and to expand your capacity, not to limit your capacity. So the way I see it is that if you're looking at your personality type or, whatever, and you're seeing limitations, that is the wrong perspective. We need to change it to be like, what does this allow you to do? What does this enable you to do or empower you to do? And how does this kind of free you up? I think we have to focus on how it's like freedom and expansion rather than kind of like constriction and feeling trapped and putting ourselves in a box.
Correct. And giving yourself permission to not see what your type presents to you as, just like you said, a rule, but more so a trend that you can either agree with and accept or choose to go against. You always have that free will as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I tend to think that everything is on a spectrum. And when I zoom out and I think about, okay, there's 16 different personality types, at least of the kind you and I are talking about today. 1 out of every 16 people, even though I know that it's not evenly broken up. I know INFJs are actually kind of rare in comparison to certain other types, but whatever. 1 out of 20 people, 1 out of 16 people are not going to be identical ever. And I work with so many diplomat types because they tend to be ones who are most attracted to personal development. Because again, they're deep feelers, deep thinkers. It makes sense. Most of my clients are INFJ, ENFJ, INFP, ENFPs. That's just how it works. And they're so different. So they might think similarly and they might feel similarly, or they might have certain patterns that are kind of through lines, but their experiences are so different and their interests are so different. And the way that they, see the world is really different. So like you said, you have to use it as a way to, as like a jumping off point, not necessarily as I have to sort of, you can't use it as a substitute for having to think critically yourself. Like you don't just get, okay, this is how an INFJ should be marketing. And then you don't have to think it. No, look at it, contemplate whether or not you feel that would align with you and work with you. And then you can decide to adopt some of, that advice or not. But you can't substitute your own sort of critical thinking and intuition for someone else's.
Right. And if you're listening to this right now and you are a diplomat, which I have to assume, at least at the time of this recording, a fair amount of you are diplomats, because up until this point in my business journey, I have quite naturally attracted a lot of diplomats, probably because I'm a diplomat too. And just like Rachel said, you and Kristen tend to attract diplomats as well. Probably because of what you coach on and probably who you are and how you coach it, like will attract that like. So if you're a diplomat and you are intrigued by this idea of creating a marketing strategy based on your personality type, but you still have this deeper knowing that there's more to the story here, Rachel and I are both saying, you're right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And we feel that too. Because not all tribes think that way. Not all tribes see it in that deeper way. They're like, okay, I'm going to attach to that label, and that's going to be exactly what I need to move forward. And yet us diplomats, we just know that there's always more. there is always more. And so I want to dive deeper into your specific type, Rach. But before we do that, I want to give the listeners an overview of diplomats, just to kind of give them some ideas of who we're really talking about here. And then we'll dig into the details. Okay. So, like we said before, diplomat tribe, there are 4 types. Those include INFJ, INFP, ENFJ, and ENFP. Some markers, kind of some indicators that you are a diplomat is that you are mission driven. You tend to be able to get behind any mission that you truly believe in. And as long as that mission of the project, of the company, of the thing that you're doing aligns with you and what you believe in, you're there. Your energy is there. You can commit to it. You're also a natural sharer of a message in your own way. We all do this a little differently. So while Rachel and I, we tend to be pretty verbal in our sharing of messages. We like to speak. Not all diplomats are like that. Some diplomats really enjoy written word expression. And you and I, Rach, we both feel that way as well.
Yeah.
There's different ways of sharing the message, but we tend to share the message. When we find something good, we're happy to and skilled at sharing it with others. And as we mentioned before, we love to dig in deeper. We often feel like there's always more you could do, dive into, help out with. And especially when we feel constricted. And I think, Rach, you hit on this a little bit because you said the word freedom a couple times as you were explaining things. When diplomats feel constricted or like their freedom has been confined a little bit, we can get uncomfortable in that situation because we feel like we're running out of the space, time, energy, whatever that we need to fully dig in and go as deep as we want. We are not surface level people in any way, shape, or form. And so we go deep. And finally, while we've already heard at this point, as you're listening to this, we've already heard from the analyst tribe. Remember, they start with strategy. As diplomats, we have to start with why. We're willing to try anything as long as we can clearly identify why we're doing it and the why behind it. Without a clear why, you lose interest. You feel like you're wasting time. Bye. Like it's just can't go. So those are the diplomats. That's what's happening. If you are a diplomat, you are probably kind of like fist bumping, like, yes, that's so me. If you're not a diplomat, hopefully this is kind of bringing you into the psyche so you can better understand the rest of our conversation here today. So what sticks out to you about that, Rachel? Everything that I just ran through, what sticks out? What resonates?
It would be kind of dumb to say all of it, but all of it.
Yeah.
So, okay, depth is so critical. I cannot do surface level. I am such a classic. I mean, I think this isn't a diplomat thing, but I think it's also in combination with being a pretty heavy introvert. I can't do small talk. I can't do it. I'm not good at it. I literally just want to dive into the deep end as soon as I meet someone. And I would rather have a really meaningful conversation about your soul and the state of your being rather than the weather or what you had for lunch. I just can't do it. I find it so meaningless. So the desire for everything to have meaning is really important. And what you said about you can't get invested unless there's a very clear meaning and purpose is 100% true. This is why I have struggled in so many of the jobs that I've had over the course of my life until this job that I created for myself, which I don't think that every diplomat needs to be an entrepreneur. I think plenty of diplomats can be fine working for other people so long as, again, there's meaning and there's purpose and they really are attached to the mission. But being someone with more of an entrepreneurial spirit and a diplomat, it was almost impossible to work for other people because I just didn't care at all about what they were doing. I thought it was at best neutral and at worst actively like kind of going against like human interest. And it just like felt physically painful to waste my life doing something that didn't matter. I mean, I'm like a textbook, almost cliche diplomat, I think.
Well, you certainly are. And I waver a little bit, but I'm still pretty textbook. And let's talk about, because we haven't really talked about what makes a diplomat a diplomat. And it's those two middle letters of your personality type, the N and the F. You could be introverted or extroverted.
Yeah.
You could be judging or perceiving, but those two middle letters are the same. You're intuitive and you're feeling. And what that, just me saying that, let's talk about the differences between the N and the S and the F and the T, that they're opposing forces. I already feel the deepening. If you can think about the N is intuitive. If you're not N, you're S, which means sensing. Therefore, if you're sensing, you're paying attention to your external cues. Meanwhile, if you're intuitive, you're paying more attention to your internal cues, what your body and your inner voice and your, like, what's going on inside as opposed to outside. Okay, so we get inward. And then if we are not an F or a T, which stands for thinking, that's using the mind and data and analysis. And as Fs, we are feelers. So instead of up in the mind, we tend to feel into our hearts and or our guts, depending on who you are. You kind of align with either one. But again, there's this deepening effect to that. Intuitive, that's inward, and feeler, that's, again, lower than the head, lower than the brain. So that's where the deep comes from. So for you, Rachel, as an INFJ, what have you found when it comes to marketing and even just business as a whole? What have you found to feel good? And has there ever been a time where you've tried something and it felt totally out of alignment with your personality type?
Yeah, plenty. I think most of the time you do a lot of things first that were wrong until you realize what felt better. So this is terrible that I'm going to say this on the marketing personalities podcast, but I hate marketing.
That's why we work so well together.
I hate it. Listen, I hate what I believe traditional marketing is often pitched as. I mean, like when you're a coach honestly, when you're an entrepreneur of any kind, but I can only speak to what I've experienced as a coach, I have just been pummeled with webinars and workshops and people trying to sell me stuff and get rich quick schemes and make $5,000 in the first month and just on and on and on and on and on. And what it often has in common that I cannot stand is it's just like follow these exact steps and then you will be rich, or then you will get your first 10 clients or whatever it is they're promising you. And I have also, so to talk about things that haven't worked, I've done plenty of that. Like I've worked with a coach in the past, not Brit, someone else. I worked with a coach in the past who was really well-meaning, very expensive. And if I could, I'd get that $10,000 back, not because I didn't like her as a person, but because it's a lot of money to spend on learning the wrong kind of lessons. But the lesson that we inadvertently learned was that she was treating everyone like a one-size-fits-all solution. Like, first we do this, then we do that, then we do Facebook ads, then we do work, then we do this webinar, then we do... And I'm like, you're not asking me how this feels. You're not asking me if this resonates with me on any deeper level. I'm just using words that diplomats apparently relate to without meaning to, like feels and deep. And it just didn't work for me. So I don't like traditional marketing for that reason, because it's often just like follow these steps and everyone is the same. So I have completely shunned that. And the way that Kristen and I do marketing is, I don't think I can call it marketing, because all I feel like I do is I am just very radically transparent and I just tell the truth, and I don't try to be slick. I don't try to adopt a voice that isn't mine. I literally just speak in my own voice, sometimes literally, sometimes in writing, with my own quirks. I am not trying to sound like anybody other than me. And my theory is that if you relate to that, and if you're the right person to work with us, you will naturally get it. You'll be attracted to what I have to say and the way I have to say it. And I won't have to sell you at all, because what's actually selling you is just me being me and you being able to see yourself in that and relating to that. And you then self-selecting of like, oh, I want to get to know that person. So it's kind of like being the lighthouse is how I see it. And like putting out the light, putting out the message, so to speak, and letting the boats find you. But you're not on the ocean, like on your jet ski, chasing the people around or jumping through the hoops in the ocean to try to get, I don't know, like a dolphin, like you're not a trained dolphin on it, whatever. This analogy is going off the rails, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, stop chasing people down and trying to jump through hoops just because that's what other people told you to do. Like, that's completely the opposite of how I see it and how I actually have found it doesn't work. Like, the other way has worked much better for me, just being the lighthouse, so to speak.
Right. The traditional putting yourself out there feels forced, feels disingenuous in the way that you just explained, like getting on your jet ski and chasing somebody down. Meanwhile, some personality types are like, I don't see the problem. That's how I do. That's fine.
Which is great for them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Typically, intuitive feelers, though, believe in their message, believe in what they're doing, because obviously they've already vetted why they're doing something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it anyway. And they feel committed and sure and firm about showing up, shining that light, and letting those who are meant to find them. It's such an intuitive place to be. The mind, if we're thinking and sensing all the external things, someone can be easily dissuaded from that. But as intuitive feelers, we're like, okay, that feels right. So I can just talk about the thing I believe in a way that feels good for me. And it's going to resonate with the right people. And intuitively, I know that that's what I'm doing here. That's why I'm here. So I really like that analogy. And I can just feel, well, as a diplomat myself, I'm like, yes, a million times. And I can feel that for other diplomats too. Now, take me into, because you and I have worked together, I know for sure how you react to the idea of, some people would call it launching. I also think of it as like hard and fast.
I knew you were going to say it and I was like waiting for it. It's such a dirty word. I hate it.
And let's be clear, when we worked together for a long time, there were things that you quote unquote launched or like brought into the world, but it didn't feel launchy, right? So yes. Launches aren't great. So how do you reconcile that with the business that you run? How do you not launch things and let people know about what you have available?
Yeah, well, I'm still trying to figure out that question, because in an ideal world, I would never launch anything. And the way I define launching is like having a select period of time that you're actively like trying to sell something and you're promoting something. And I don't know. I would like to hear your thoughts in a minute about, is this just a diplomat thing? Do we all hate launching, or is it just me? But if I were to theorize about being more than just me, I would say that I think that if you're a really deep feeling type, the whole idea of pushing stuff on people and trying to promote yourself can feel a little bit icky and a little bit disingenuous, like buy my thing. And often launching requires you having to come up with some sense of urgency, which is hard to do sometimes in an authentic way, especially if you're selling something that's virtual and that you don't actually have a limited amount of, but you have to sort of make it as if it's a limited amount. And so you have to be like, well, there's a limited amount of time, or I can only have X number of spots, or I'm going to give away 10 free coaching sessions. And so I don't like it, because to me, it feels very like it feels too much like pushing and forcing and striving and like putting stuff in people's face. I don't prefer it. And it's like the least favorite thing that I do. And I do it as little as I possibly can. But the way I vastly prefer to make an income is by doing things that are evergreen, that don't feel like I'm pushing anything in anybody's face. So we have one course that's available all the time. And it's not that we don't sell it. We do have some marketing stuff in place. Like you take the quiz and then you get a PDF and you read the PDF. And within that, there's a code that gets you $50 off of our course for a certain period of time. But what's great is that that's an evergreen email series that just goes out without me having to be behind the wheel anymore at all. So I get to be sort of removed a little bit from that process, and it's still happening, which I love. Like I love the idea of residual income because it allows you to free up your time and you can still be making money even if you're not actively working in that moment. That feels really good to me. And that's not at all launching. And the other thing I really love doing is blogging, and particularly podcasting, because I'm a writer, but I prefer speaking even more, I think. And what's so great about that is that these are conversations I have anyway with Kristen or with, other friends and experts and guests that we have on. And they're just deep conversations about things I really care about, things I believe in. It allows people to listen to it. They learn something. They get shifted in some big way. And it holds up a mirror often to them. And then they realize, oh, I am having trouble with that. And I didn't even realize it until I heard you say it. Or I hear this a lot, like you put into words something that I was having a really hard time getting clear on. And now that I understand that, now I want to work on it more. And then it's like they end up reaching out to us often. Mm-hmm. So again, it's not at all about like forcing anything onto anybody. It's just about being consistent and disciplined about sharing my message and just being really honest and transparent and kind of trying to get myself as far removed from like the nitty gritty of like launch codes and here's your offer window and all of that stuff, like removing myself as much as possible from those icky technical details that I don't love.
Right. I think you just hit on something, and I'm curious to hear your perspective. I don't know that this will apply to all diplomats. I'm just curious to see what Rachel has to say about this. How do you achieve consistency as an intuitive feeler? Now, the caveat to this is that we're both J's. You're an INFJ.
You're about to say the J helps.
Yeah, the J definitely helps here. But I know that is not always a fun piece for you, right? Like,
no.
So at some point in the future, I'm definitely going to ask this question to an NFP and get their take. But I want yours right now. How do you reconcile the N and the F, this inward, deep feeling being that you are, and showing up consistently, even when sometimes your intuition, your feelings, your emotions don't align with consistently showing up?
Oh, that is a really, really good question. And I don't have a very clean answer because it's something that I struggled a lot with. But I think it's really worth talking about because yes, I think a lot of people are also struggling with this. Like sometimes you just intuitively feel like the answer is not to do anything different. And the answer is maybe to do a huge overhaul, and your heart says yes. And then your mind is like, well, you still need to make money. So you can't completely axe that thing that you really just want to burn down as of like yesterday. So I think one is that you have to have like a pretty good relationship with practicality and your bank account and be like, can I afford to just burn this down? Or might there be a gentler way for me to transition out of this? Like, it's not that you're not allowed to make a change, or it's not that you're not allowed to sit still, even though you feel like you should be moving. It's that we're going to try to maintain balance and not do anything in extremes. I think that's often, if you're an intuitive feeler, you're often like, I either want to sit and do absolutely nothing and just be, or I want to completely like revolutionize everything and I want to change it all right now. And neither one of those things are very sustainable. So the thing that's actually coming up for me that's more about how to personally take care of yourself so that you're able to show up more consistently in your life and your business is that you have to, and this is just so true for me, and it helps me be consistent, I think, is you have to build in a lot of time to yourself to rest and relax and recharge and be off the clock. Because I think that what can really pull on your ability to be consistent and to often power through things you don't feel like doing, which is a huge part of entrepreneurship, is you have to have enough energy to do that without wanting to break down and cry and pull your hair out. But if you're working 12-hour days, or if you're overcommitting, or you're over filling up your calendar, or you're trying to please everybody but yourself, which a lot of diplomats are not great at. There are a lot of them can identify with being people pleasers, I think, because of how empathic a lot of them are and compassionate and how much they care and they want to be of service. They can fall into that trap. Then if you're not taking good care of yourself, or if you're not giving yourself enough time to rest and relax and recharge and completely disconnect, then it really messes with your ability to do hard things consistently. So I'm all about taking a lot of having really good boundaries around my work and my life, so that when it's time to work again, even if I'm not 100% thrilled about what I'm doing that day, I feel like I can at least get to a point of, okay, you know what? I might not love this, but this is good for me. It's the healthiest way for me to approach this. I'm just going to put on my big girl pants and I'm going to do it. But if you're this close to having a meltdown because you're sleep deprived and you've overworked yourself, you might not be able to actually push through and do the difficult thing that you don't really feel like doing. So this has a lot to do with taking care of your whole self, not just your business self.
Yes. And intuitive feeler, we tend to be pretty holistic. What I'll throw in there is what I find, again, this might just be my experience, but what I find is when I have overdone it, I've pushed past, I intuitively hear the voice saying, you need to just slow up, you need to slow down, you need to take a break, you need a rest day, whatever. And I push past that and I go through it. Whatever is beyond that pushing past is so driven by the mind, because you're starting to get tired.
Yeah.
And when you get tired, your mind ramps up to try to overcompensate almost. That is just not a place personally I want to work from. I know it's not my best. I, as an intuitive feeler, want to intuitively work. And the funny thing about that is that doesn't always look like everybody else's work. It rarely looks like everybody else's work. And I know your work doesn't look like my work at all. And we've talked about that at length before too. It's at some point, there has to be a release of the expectation around what this is supposed to look like, so your intuition and your feelings can actually do their job.
Exactly. So, what you're saying is that if you are an intuitive feeling person, but you're trying to do your business like a thinking person, which means you're trying to put a ton of logically, it makes sense to work right now. Well, that might be a good way to think if you are a really logical person and you're wired that way and it is really in alignment for you to work that way. However, if you are a really deeply feeling intuitive person, a diplomat, and you're trying to think your way into a good business strategy or into even just a good outline of your day-to-day structure, you're going to be going against the current all day long, which means you're going to waste more energy, because it requires a lot more energy to paddle against a current than it is to just turn your canoe around and go with it. So that is a huge way that I live my life and that I run my business, is that I don't do things because they make logical sense. I do intuitive sense to me, which means if I should be working because I have an open afternoon, but I feel terrible about the idea, or I feel I want to rip my hair out about it, or I just want to have a tantrum, then maybe the answer is you need to go outside, you need to take a walk, you need to take a shower, or you need to completely reset, or you need to just literally go read a book or something and refresh your energy and come back to it when you're feeling more balanced. And when you come back to it, I guarantee you'll have more energy, more momentum to do that thing. You'll get more done when you give yourself that chance, and the quality of it will be so much better than if you tried to push through because logically I should be working right now. So I never try to like push through, hardly ever. And anyway.
Yeah, you do that really well. As I've watched you, you do that really well. I can say for me, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this one. But what I recognize is I think our society and the way that I was raised in school, I think that maybe not the intuitive, but definitely the feeling part of me was clamped down. And I was taught that the thinker was more valuable than the feeler in me. And so it took me some time while I was always an N and F. I was always an NF. I could believe the lie pretty easily, especially through high school, college, and I would say early 20s. I easily believed the lie that the thinking way was the right way and the feeling way was not. And so I still recognize within myself and very much in people that I still work with, as intuitive feelers, it's often I don't want to say struggle, but a thing we have to deal with to let the thinking mind go and release that. Because you have to choose to do it. It's not going to do it on its own. Choose to release that so our feelings can drive the bus a little bit more, because that's how we are meant to be. Thinkers, not so much. Like analysts who are intuitive thinkers, go for it, sister. Like, go with that thinking mind. That's totally fine. For us, though, embracing that feeler is sometimes tough. And I see you doing that really, really well. Your thinking mind really doesn't dictate from my perspective. I don't know. Like, take me into that.
Well, I was just laughing because I'm being snarky in my head. Like, your thinking mind, it like barely exists. Well, okay. So I know when I'm in my thinking mind, when I feel anxiety.
Yeah.
For the most part. Because I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but when I'm overthinking something and like under trusting, it's probably a good way to say that.
Oh, yeah.
Under feeling, then it results in anxiety and not being able to take a deep breath and being panicked and being like, oh my God, how am I going to figure this out with my mind? Well, I'm not wired to figure things out with my mind. I'm wired to sit still and to feel and to deeply just intuitively know. And so it's taken a long time to get me to the point where I'm comfortable, like feeling more than I think and intuiting more than I think. And it's not that I don't ever think. I do. I use logic and rationality and reason, but it's just not the way I run my business. And I think what gives me permission to do it is that I've been doing this long enough to know that when I think my way into a solution, it doesn't usually turn out very well. And when I feel my way into it, or when I intuit my way into it, it usually turns out perfectly fine or really good. And so it's like, I have a lot of proof that my life is better and this is true. Like, you have to have courage to not try to think your way into or out of problems, but to feel and intuit and just kind of often not even like literally sometimes wait for an answer to come sometimes, which is really uncomfortable, or to just go against the grain of what everyone else is doing or what you feel you should be doing, but you just know isn't right. Often going against the thinking mind is going against like evidence, which is terrifying for people. Like, the metrics say that won't work, or the evidence suggests that that's stupid. But I feel as if it's so much smarter to do it that way, or it just feels completely right for me to do it that way. A good example of that is that Kristen and I could probably be making more money. Like, I know we could be making more money per year than we make right now. But in order to do that, I would have to like run at least one more round of a course. And I'd have to have a lot more like metrics, and I'd have to care a lot more about analytics and that type of stuff. And in order for me to do that, I'd have to operate in a way that's so opposite of who I am. I'd have to push, I'd have to force, I'd have to strive. And it would decrease substantially from my quality of life. And so you have a choice. I can either make more money, but have a less quality, like a lower quality life, or I can maybe go the slower path of growth, which is, focus more on stability and like slowly growing rather than trying to make a bunch of money really fast, and work less and make less money, but have a higher quality life, not be anxious, have time to myself to rest and rejuvenate. And to me, there's no contest. But the logical mind would tell you that's stupid, and that the only metric of success is how much money you're making and how you look to everyone else and what your metrics are. And I don't care. I would much rather feel good than look good to everybody else. Oh, another great example of this is that, this, Kristen and I, because we have a quiz, so many people have taken it and gotten on our list, and then they're complete duds. So we had a list that was like 25,000 people at one point. But our open rate was so low because a lot of those people were just duds that never opened the email again after they took the quiz and opted in. So we've been culling people from our list for the past 6 to 12 months. I don't know, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And our list is now like a third of the size it once was. And our open rate is now so much better. And guess what? We didn't make any less money. It didn't change anything.
Right.
Because they were duds. They weren't opening the email anyway. It was making me feel like such crap to see that no one was opening the emails. And now it's like, no, the same people are opening the emails, but it looks so much healthier and it feels so much healthier. Also, it helps your deliverability too. Like, I actually think that, and energetically from a broader perspective, I think clearing that space allows for the kind of people I want to find us. So all of that is just like a really long-winded series of thoughts and examples about how I try to feel and intuit in my decisions rather than do things that logically other people would probably be terrified to do in business.
Right.
But I just don't care.
Yeah. Great examples. Yes. Bravo. I like the way you do business. I like how diplomats who have embraced their intuitive feelerness, I like how they do business too. And like we both said, we both tend to attract those types of people. And I know that we really dig those types of people. I mean, we dig all people, but when we see that intuitive feeler actually be embraced, because it's not always easily embraced, when we see that embraced, it's a really cool thing that can happen. It really, my deep knowing sees your deep knowing, if that, right? It's like, I can appreciate that. So I would like to know, what would you tell a fellow intuitive feeler as they're approaching their marketing strategy? Especially because you've been around here for a while. What would you tell them?
Right. I've been around the block in my day. Well, and I have coached plenty of entrepreneurs, and most of them having been diplomats. And a lot of them struggle with exactly what we've been talking about. I recently had a conversation with someone who had been watching a ton of webinars and workshops about how to write your sales page and how to get people to buy it. And she had taken all that advice and she had written a sales page, and she was like sharing it with me and saying, I hate this. I hate it. I don't know why I hate it, but I hate it. And I was like, because it doesn't sound like you at all. And this isn't actually how you talk. And this isn't like, the reason you hate it is because you're not going to attract the people you want to attract using this voice, whoever this person is, or using these tactics, whatever this is supposed to be. So I encouraged her to like rewrite it as if she was telling a story to her best friend or to me, someone who she knew would relate to it, and the type of person that she wanted to attract. And it flowed out of her so easily. She'd been having terrible writer's block and an inability to work on this thing, but it was because she was trying to think her way into it as opposed to feel and intuit what the right message. So a couple of things I have to say to people like her and the people who are listening to this who resonate with the diplomat type. One, please stop taking so much external advice. Be really, really, really careful about who you take your information from. I think people like Brit are really safe to get your information from because she's very clearly saying there's not one way to do this. There's no right way to do this. They're not trying to give you like easy 3 ways to fix XYZ problem. They're not giving you step-by-step tutorials. They're trying to address problems from a deeper internal standpoint and help you kind of go from internal to external rather than trying to kind of stay on the surface level. This is not going to work, especially not for a diplomat type. So stop taking so much external advice and be very careful about who you take your advice from. I think probably the biggest thing that I always come back to, and that has worked for me over and over and over again, is that I do not try to sound like anybody but myself. And that's it. Like, I write the way that I speak. When I speak, I am really honest and transparent. My sense of humor is what it is. It's probably not for everybody because I'm very dry and sarcastic and, blunt sometimes. And people appreciate it who resonate with me and Kristen and our message. And if they don't resonate with it, this is another huge point. It is not my job to change your mind. Like, if you don't resonate with me, why the hell would I want to work with you? I don't need to go out and convince anybody to work with me. My job is to be as much of myself as I possibly can be and as honest as I can be. And that means being consistent with my message. And if I was only putting out podcast episodes sporadically, that would probably not be a very good way to grow a business or to attract an audience. But in my message, which is honest and transparent, I'm also very consistent. Like, we do have structure around it. I don't, as much as I would like sometimes to sit around doing nothing, I do have a regular structure that I think helps attract people in a consistent way. Not that it couldn't be better, but we've been, blogging for the past 5 or 6 years, pretty much every week for 5 years. I think that's helped. That's built momentum. So, okay, here's another thing. I'm just full of ideas, Brit.
Go, go, go.
Okay. You have to find the medium to communicate in that feels the best to you.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, I should be blogging or I should be vlogging. People tell me that. They're like, oh, but you're so entertaining. You're probably listening to this podcast like, what? No. But listen, start vlogging, do Instagram lives. And I'm like, that feels like a lot of work. I don't know either that I want to do that. But if the medium doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. There is a medium that will fit with you and your personality type. I have a friend who communicates with her clients solely through Voxer because she just cannot do email. She cannot do written communication. She can't keep up with it. It's not her medium at all. And she doesn't want to blog. So she literally just communicates with people through Voxer. And that's it. And I'm like, if that works for you, great. That would not work for me. But I only communicate in the ways that are align most naturally with who I am and the way that my voice works. Because if the medium fits and aligns with you, the ease with which people will receive it will increase tenfold. You're trying to force a blog post and you're not a writer. Who's going to resonate with that? They're going to be able to feel the tension. They're going to be able to feel the inauthenticity of that. I think for diplomats, authenticity is everything. And so everything you have to do has to come from a place of integrity and authenticity. And you can't force it just because you think it makes sense or you think that's what people want to hear. The right people will align with whatever you authentically decide to do that works for you. That's the bottom line.
Bottom line. Exactly. That really relates to your specific personality type because what's going to feel good for you as an INFJ is long form content. Again, long form because...
Can you tell? Long-winded as hell over here.
Long form, long-winded, to each her own.
Mm-hmm.
But that long form content gives you the freedom and the space that you need to fully dive into what you need to dive into to feel like you've really worked it out.
Exactly.
You and Kristen, both INFJs, started by blogging long blog posts. I mean, I'm sure there's nothing
They're
on your blog.
1,600 words.
Yeah.
It's no one wants to read that much.
You've written several books in your lifetime. They just aren't packaged as books yet. But they will be someday. I'm going to have you do that. But the long blog posts. And then last year, you started the Clarity on Fire podcast, which allows you, as long as you want, podcast conversations, long form content. That feels good for you. On the other side, video and knowing you personally, video, that is not your thing. But that doesn't mean video isn't another INFJ's thing. It's just choose your format, whatever feels right for you.
It's just not my thing. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Choose that format and go with it. Yes, I agree. Okay. So really, really great advice. Thank you for all of that. I want the listeners to know where to go and find you online, you and Kristen both. So where can they go?
Okay. So clarityonfire.com. I recommend that you guys take the passion profile quiz. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not. I mean, I know most of the people working for this or listening to this are going to have an entrepreneurial streak. However, this is a really good way to get clear on how your passion intersects with the way that you're most designed to work. And understanding that in combination with your personality type is so important, because I might be an INFJ, but there's 4 different passion profiles. And if you're an INFJ thriver, that's very different than an INFJ fire starter. So it really, really makes a difference for you to understand the way in which your passion and your work need to be combined in an ideal way. So it's only 11 questions. It'll take you 2 minutes. I would take that and read your PDF, and that'll give you a good indication. And I'm guessing that if there are lingering questions you may be having or issues that you're like, this business, I've been trying to do it and I just don't know that it feels exactly right, but I can't put my finger on why. I have a suspicion that this may help answer some of those questions, because often you think there's something wrong with what you're doing, and in reality, there's an issue with how you're doing it. And so this will help address that problem and often shine a light on a mismatch you didn't realize was going on, and then things will click and make sense and start to flow again. And the other way that I recommend you guys getting to know us is, like Brit said, through the podcast. Clarity on Fire on any podcast app of choice. We've been doing it for almost a year now, and there's a ton of episodes. Have fun scrolling through and finding anything that resonates with you. We do weekly blog episodes, which are only like 15-ish minutes, where we just read that week's blog to you so that you don't have to read 1,600 words. And then we do weekly longer form episodes on Fridays, which alternate between, we have an advice column and we have interviews with normal people, we have interviews with experts, and we have side chats where Kristen and I just sit down and we just turn on a microphone and we start talking about a topic with very little preparation. So there's something for everybody, and we try to vary it so that there's always something different, but all getting to that theme of getting clear on what you really want and who you really are, and getting rid of the gunk that's blocking your ability to know and have clarity.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say right now, I was part of the whole birthing of the Clarity on Fire podcast.
Yes, she was.
I helped that happen. And ever since it launched, I've listened to every single episode and I never miss one. And it's not because Rachel and Kristen are friends. These are people that are having real, honest conversations about things that resonate with me. And it's always something good. There's always something in those conversations that you have, whether it's just like a blog post or an interview or a side chat, whatever it is. There's always a shift that happens in those conversations that I love, because they're 2 INFJs, they go deep. So if you're also a diplomat,
you're going to love
and
it.
you like deep conversation, you're going to, oh my goodness, you're going to go listen to that podcast. You're never going to stop. You're just going to love it. Okay. So clarityonfire.com/quiz is where you can go find the passion profile quiz. And then you can go find their podcast on any podcast app. And the name is Clarity on Fire. Okay. So go check them out. And to find a marketing strategy that feels good to you, visit marketingpersonalities.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Now it's time to connect your marketing strategy to your personality type. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to download your marketing personality type full report. Use the code MPP at checkout to get $10 off. And that's a super special code for podcast listeners as a way to say thank you for being here. In your full report, you'll learn about your personality type, how it relates to the work you do, what your best marketing strategy includes so you can start implementing it right away, what your worst marketing strategy includes so you can avoid it, and so much more. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to get your full report and use the code MPP at checkout to receive $10 off your purchase. And one more thing before you skip on to the next podcast. Would you please share this episode with your entrepreneur friends who also need to feel good about their marketing strategies? Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app right now and share it out via text, Facebook, or my favorite, Instagram. Remember to tag me at Marketing Personalities in the photo so I can be sure to send you a huge high five and thank you for sharing the love. This podcast is edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, and you can find them at podcastengineers.com. That's all for now. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Love ya. Bye.